So I wanted to just take a few minutes today to talk about the COVID pandemic and give an update, as we've received lots of questions. So as you know, it's now been a year since we've been dealing with this pandemic. We have in the country, the U.S., we have over 500,000 now, or nearing 500,000 deaths. Worldwide, 2.2 million deaths. It's been nearly a year that we've been dealing with this, and back when it started, if you remember, we were wishing we had weapons that we could fight this with. We were wishing for a vaccine, wishing for medicines and treatments. And there has been many advances made in that regard for treatment and things, but obviously we're still fighting the pandemic. Now we're very excited to have vaccines developed and available for us, and we just wanted to address some of the questions that we've heard about that, both through our organization and our patients, and also elsewhere. So first off, the development of the COVID vaccine has been a question. Obviously it was rapid. We were hoping for this a year ago. It was thought never to be possible. Most vaccines have taken years to develop. In this case, because the technology had been worked on for decades, and this mRNA technology and the availability to image this virus was available, we were able to get that accomplished within a year, which is quite remarkable. That has raised questions from people maybe that weren't aware of all that research being done, whether this is still a safe vaccine, whether it's something that will potentially do the job. But as all the studies that have been done and all the phases of research have been completed, it has met all those requirements, and we're confident in saying that it is a safe vaccine and an effective vaccine, more effective honestly than many vaccines that have been developed, with the efficacy now closing 95%. So specific questions, how many vaccines do we currently have? Well, in the U.S. we've approved, or the FDA has approved through their emergency use authorization process, 2 vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. Both of these are called mRNA vaccines. These are vaccines that specifically try and mimic a protein that the virus has on its surface, and the body then develops antibodies to that, and then we're able to fight off the virus when we're exposed to it. So that type of a process was worked out for many other viruses in the past, but has never been approved as a vaccine. Now Pfizer and Moderna both have approved that, gotten that approved, and those are the 2 vaccines that we have been currently using here in Minnesota. Obviously at this point, we know that the vaccines are 2-dose series. Both vaccines have been approved for that. The Pfizer vaccine is a 3-week interval. The Moderna vaccine is a 4-week or 28-day interval. We are aware that the efficacy of those is 94 to 95%. Recommendations are that we, after the vaccine, because we are still not clear whether the vaccine protects against being able to carry the virus, we still are recommending that a person mask, that they still practice social distancing, and that we still hand wash and do that as we have been this whole last year. Obviously that's a little frustrating for us. We want to get beyond that, but the vaccine is very good. We just want to make sure that we know how protective it is against spreading this virus as we go forward. There are other vaccines in development and even being used across the world. There's a vaccine by AstraZeneca that is also a similar 2-dose series. The UK is using that one. They have had some variations in how they're dosing that, whether they're using the interval that was initially studied or whether they're spreading it out. But the bottom line is that vaccine also seems to have good efficacy in the 70 to 90% range, and we're hoping that that one also will be approved here in the U.S. And then Johnson & Johnson also has a vaccine coming out. The difference with the Johnson & Johnson one that we understand is that it's a single-dose vaccine, which may have benefit obviously in not having to have a person come back. It also is beneficial in the fact that we think it's going to be easier to transport, not requiring some of the other things that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines require with cold storage, and that it possibly is going to be cheaper, which will make it easier to get to all parts of the country. People ask about contraindications to vaccines, and really obviously that is a concern with something new, but the only true contraindications where you should not get the vaccine at all is if you've had an anaphylactic or serious reaction to the vaccine the first time you got the dose. Beyond that, if you've had reaction that was milder, or if you've reacted in the past to other things, whether it's another vaccine, whether it's foods, different things like that, those are what they're calling cautions or precautions. You might want to talk that over with your provider. but in general, they're not absolutely contraindicated in those situations. There are certain components of the mRNA vaccine, both the mRNA itself and what's called polyethylene glycol and things called polysorbates. Those might be used in other things as well. If you have ever reacted to those, you should not receive this vaccine. But beyond that, they're more precautionary in those instances of other reactions, not absolute contraindications. Another question had come out regarding some of the changes that have occurred with the virus. So viruses, generally by the way that they are living in our world, change rapidly, and so they mutate. Coronavirus, which causes COVID, is also mutating as it has been around for the past year or longer. So we're seeing strains that are causing some concern both in the UK, in South Africa, and in Brazil. These three specific strains seem to be the most prevalent. As the virus mutates, what we hope happens is that it becomes weaker and actually dies out. That has not happened yet, but what we're hoping also is that it does not cause the virus to become resistant or more difficult to cover with the vaccines. And as of yet, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the vaccines are still effective, possibly a little decrease in effectiveness, but it does not appear to be eliminating the effectiveness of the vaccines, and so that obviously is a good thing. There was a question regarding whether a vaccine that was started could be changed to a different vaccine manufacturer. Generally, the recommendation is that this not be done, that we use the same vaccine manufacturer, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, or one of these other ones I mentioned, in completing the vaccine series. So if you started with one, should finish with one. Now, obviously, that has depended on supply. As we go forward, we're hoping the supply improves, but that may be something that changes that recommendation, but that is currently what's being recommended. Then there was a question regarding use of pain medication, and this is something that's come out since the vaccine has been available. Initially you think, well, I had a sore arm or I have some muscle aches, I should take Tylenol or ibuprofen, or I've heard that that happens, I think I'm going to take those medicines ahead of the vaccine. Well, what they're recommending now, just because there's a remote chance that taking those medicines might blunt your body's response to the vaccine, they're recommending that we try and avoid taking Tylenol, Advil, Aleve, over-the-counter pain medicines like that prior to getting the vaccine, so that we don't blunt the effectiveness of the vaccine just because of that medicine being in our system. If you're somebody that has to be on those medications for another serious medical condition, certainly you can take that, and it obviously is weighing the risk and benefit. But for most of us, we recommend not taking those medicines at least a day or two ahead of your vaccine. And then the question would be, well, after the vaccine, what if I'm hurting or having side effects? In that instance, your body's already reacting and developing immunity, so it should not be an issue as much taking them after you've received the vaccine, and that should be okay. Then the question is, how long after the second dose of the vaccine am I protected? Well, the experts think that that takes about 2 weeks. So you do not have immediate protection from a vaccine when you get it into your system. It takes 2 weeks for the body's system to develop that immunity. So as you probably read, there are cases where somebody's received the vaccine, even the second dose, and then come up positive for COVID. That doesn't mean the vaccine didn't work. It just means that it was too early for it to be effective. And then lastly, there's questions regarding the side effects that are associated with the vaccine. So as with any vaccine, when we get a shot in the arm, our arm might be sore for a day or two. That's fairly common, very mild typically, and lasts only a day or two. The first dose of the vaccine doesn't seem to cause a lot of systemic or total body side effects otherwise, but it can, and they may be muscle achiness or fatigue, maybe even a little bit of a fever, but those side effects should be short-lived. The second dose of the vaccine, because that's the one where the body is really reacting now to make the immunity, might cause a little higher incidence of those side effects, but again, they're typically mild, typically short-lived, and can be treated if need be with one of these over-the-counter medications to get through it. Very rarely does somebody have a more significant reaction or take longer to recover, maybe a day or two or three, but beyond that, it is generally mild side effects that we're seeing from these vaccines, and so that usually has not been a deterrent to getting it. Several other questions have come up just in general regarding COVID. One of them is, how long prior to a positive test may a person be contagious? And I kind of understand the intent behind this question, but one of the bigger things to remember about COVID is there are a vast majority of people that can get COVID, actually the infection, and not have a lot of symptoms. So we can't depend on the ability to say, well, I don't have symptoms, therefore I don't have the infection. And therefore even testing is sometimes difficult to know the timing of it. But if you do develop symptoms of COVID, the ideal time to test, we feel, is about 3 to 5 days after you've had your symptoms come on, because the testing becomes more sensitive or more effective at that 3 to 5 day window. So testing prior to that, I woke up with a headache today, probably not as effective as if you wait 2 or 3 days at least. And but just to remember again that the virus might still be in your system. You might be able to spread it to your relatives without a lot of symptoms, and therefore we can't depend on symptoms to really be our only sign. Another question came up regarding the spread of COVID, and that was, can this virus be spread through the air more than 6 feet? And obviously there have been some guidance put out, try and avoid being within 6 feet of people, try and wear masks. Obviously those things all have been very effective. There are certain cases where the virus might be transmitted through the air further than 6 feet. Say if you're in an enclosed environment, the air doesn't circulate, poor ventilation, things like that. Or if a person is truly aerosolizing it actively, whether it's a severe cough or whether they're having a procedure where they're having something in their throat or in their airways. So that can happen, greater than 6 feet of a virus virus going through the air greater than 6 feet, but it is unlikely in day-to-day life, and so 6 feet is still the recommendation for space for distancing. And then last, I just wanted to put out a few reminders just as we've been dealing with this for the last year, as mentioned. So first of all, simple things are really the most effective, even with this virus, as it's been going on. So don't get together with other people that you care about when you're ill. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer, but it is something that common sense should rule, and it does work. Our mantra of wearing masks, social distancing, washing your hands, those really have been proven to be the best weapons to limit this spread of the virus and to try and protect you, your family members, and the community. Get vaccinated when it's available for you. We're doing the vaccinations because of limited supply by trying to pick the highest risk and those that really should be vaccinated earliest, and then gradually as the supply improves, we'll spread that to the others. So the vaccines will be coming. It may take months to get all of us vaccinated, but again, just try and be patient. When your time comes available and the vaccine is there, sign up and get it. I hope that these questions and answers have been helpful for you to understand maybe what some of the things out there that have been going around, and hopefully giving you some facts to fall back on. And then lastly, I just say be patient. I mean, I think that as with anything, this too will pass, but it certainly has left us with many things that we wish would get back to, quote, normal. But our choices today, like I've said earlier, have impact on our health, the health of our families and friends and our communities, and it will also help us as we go forward with this as a nation and in the world. So thank you for your time.